I went through this period where I could not put a deal together. I had buyers, I had good listings, I was listing more listings. I couldn't put a deal together that saved my life.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of CREB Cast. Today, we are honored to be joined by our current president and CEO, Alan Tennant. Thank you, Alan, for taking the time out to come and join us for the CREB Cast.
Thanks, Sam. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Rainy day, so much for blue sky Calgary, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, the silver lining is that everything will be nice and green.
We're going to be blue and green.
Yes. That's fantastic. Well, we wanted to sit down with you and just get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
And so I've got a few questions that I would love to run by you.
Sure. But, I'm just dying to know, because I love this whole idea. But you go first. Tell me why we're doing these, because I have an idea about why we're doing these, but I want to hear the official Sam version.
Well, you know me. I'm a people person, and I love to know our membership. And I thought, well, why not take that into the masses and let everybody get to know the membership? Sometimes real estate comes across as a little bit serious and, everybody's just transactional. But there's so many fun things and so many memorable things that happen throughout your careers. And it's just fun to share. And we're not going to get into any specifics. We want to make sure that we're not doing anything against the Competition Act. We just want to be very kind of general in our stories and our answers and just have some fun and see where it goes.
I love it. Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's a great initiative. I love that the team came together to make this idea come to life. We have so many great stories to tell.
We sure do.
That's the part I'm really thrilled about. So
we sure do.
I'm looking forward to watching all.
Thank you for asking the question, because I'm sure there's other people out there thinking, doesn't Sam have anything better to do than to sit there and talk to the members all day?
It's kind of what this job requires, actually, is for me to think about what questions are on people's minds all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So, Alan, I've been privileged to know you for my whole career, which is 32 years. And I know that prior to coming to CREB as the president and CEO, you actually were a realtor yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How long were you in the business? Did you love it? What brought you over to the CREB executive side of things?
Sure. So I started as a realtor in 1985. So I was about 26. I had graduated from SAIT with a diploma in a business marketing diploma, business administration and marketing. And I had gone to work for the TD Bank for a few years. And then my father, who was in the weekly newspaper business, persuaded me to come into the family business. I was in the family business and starting to think, maybe that wasn't really for me, and decided that real estate was going to be my new career. And I threw myself into it. I didn't really have this ongoing burning desire. I wasn't one of the folks out there that had this as one of those bucket list things. But I had realized quickly that it was exactly, and I'm 26, so what do I know about anything really, but young family, breadwinner, needed to get it going, and realized this was a business that really gave you a good return for your effort. And I soon realized that all my training in the banking industry, where I learned about systems and the importance of some structure, that lent itself to what I learned in the newspaper business about marketing and about the importance of a strong local profile and having a good brand. And all those things sort of clicked for me. And I struggled. My first couple of years were tough, and it's not like I started setting records right away, but it wasn't long before I was starting to realize that this was going to be my calling. And so I would say I'm a lifer. It's been 40 years since then, basically. So 26 years as a realtor. And then 14 years ago, I had the idea that I wanted to get into association management. And I had been fortunate that throughout my career as a realtor, and I've always been involved in community. We were in Airdrie. And Airdrie is a very fertile place for volunteerism and community spirit. And I just carried that into the real estate space. And I felt almost a duty, but not just to save the world and serve other realtors, but a duty to myself and to my business to get involved as a volunteer. And I think that's one thing about volunteerism and philanthropy that I think has a bit of a bad reputation, and that is that it's somewhere where you shouldn't profit yourself. You shouldn't benefit from it. And I've never shied away from that. I mean, I think people groan sometimes when people say that, they're doing everything for altruistic reasons and it's not about me, it's about everybody else, except they manage to make it about them all the time. I find that there is an element where you have to feel challenged and gratified and that you're growing in the volunteer experience, and it keeps you coming back for more. So for me, I managed to work my way through, and I had no grand plan. I wasn't a volunteer who said I'm going to be president of the Calgary Real Estate Board in 1998, but it evolved that way. And along the way, I chaired the CREB Realtor Community Foundation. Loved every second of that. And it wasn't all successes. When I ran for election the first time, it was a bit of a surprise to me and to everybody. In those days, they did the election in the AGM, and somebody sitting near me nominated me. And I failed miserably. There was no preparation. Nobody knew who I was.
Right.
And I realized I want to do this, but I'll do it right. So I got elected the next year and really enjoyed my time on the Board of Governors. But it gave me a real taste for leadership, I suppose, but also for making a difference. And that transformed into being on the board. I didn't have any desire to be involved at the provincial level, and I wasn't even setting my sights on CREA at the national level. But CREB was involved with Vancouver and the Toronto board in creating what became CREB Link. We called it Realtor Link, and it was this intranet, this new thing, that allowed realtors to communicate with each other in a sort of a protected environment. So that really spoke to me, the ability for members to connect and become more involved, gain more knowledge. I don't know how many times on the board I would say things like, well, what do other boards do? Or, how has everybody else solved this problem? Are we the only one with this problem even? And it was really that opportunity to create that. So CREA was struggling with how to be involved. The boards didn't really want CREA involved. All the same dynamics exist today. Many years later, what's really changed? Not much. But there was this dynamic that there was some leadership needed, and it was a time when some of the various large boards had feuds going amongst themselves. Again, nothing new there. And we were seen as Switzerland, which some people would chuckle about now, but we were seen as that
neutral
party that just wanted the right thing to happen. So we put this thing together, created a new national entity, eventually sold it to CREA. That became a council within CREA. And as a member of the council, as the chair of it, because I went to a meeting to be the chair, and Ron Ash said to me, they want you to chair it because they don't want anybody else doing it. And I said, I love the endorsement. That's I'm the best person because they hate me the least. And anyway, it was reality. And I chaired that first meeting and basically every meeting until I handed it off many years later. And it was a really interesting experience because MLS.ca, which is what Realtor.ca used to be known as, had been launched not long before. And there was a lot of challenges and a lot of fear around what that meant. And we wanted this new MLS Technology Council to also take care of Realtor.ca. In fact, it wasn't long after that we changed it to Realtor.ca because we thought it was kind of a dumb move, which when I said that out loud offended some people, but they appreciated my frankness. Calling it MLS.ca and then telling the consumer, this isn't for you, this isn't the MLS, and no, you can't have MLS access, was, just a recipe for disaster. So we fixed that up and created other problems.
It sounds like you've been on the cusp of many exciting things, and you've seen it grow like from a 26-year-old to where you are today. You've seen many things happen right in front of you. And technology, I would imagine, has just grown in leaps. I mean, it's probably grown in leaps and bounds since this morning, let alone over.
Yeah, I'm losing time. I'm getting behind, Sam. I got to get back in there. Actually, I agree. It has changed a lot. It's continually changing. And to be able to recognize my own fears and my own concerns, I remember CREA going on a cross-country tour talking about MLS.ca. And I remember walking up to a microphone at the Red and White Club, and I said, so you're going to put every listing in Canada on one website? Yes. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And I went and sat down. Huge round of applause. I told them, only to realize a couple years later, I was in the midst of making that happen. And it actually made perfect sense.
Yeah.
But it took time. I remember the first computer I bought. I had a friend, a neighbor across the street who was into computers. And he said, you really need one for your business. This is the way of the future. And I said, I don't know. What do I do with it? So he said, I'll help you buy one. So he helped me. We went to the store, and he told the guy what I wanted, and I wrote this massive check. Ask older people in your office what a check is. and I brought these boxes home, and then Keith said, I'm going out of town. I've got a conference. I'll be back next week, and we'll get it set up. But go ahead and unpack it. I wasn't touching those boxes.
No.
So it sat in my office. I wouldn't touch it. The kids climbed all over it. That freaked me out. And it just didn't feel like the solution that it ended up being.
Yeah.
And now I have a persistently sore neck because I look at my phone so much and my iPad and my laptop.
Right.
And, now it's part of my physiology.
You and everybody else, I tell you. I think you've just really aged yourself by explaining that you went out and bought your first computer and it was in a box that the kids could actually climb on. These days, the boxes are so thin you don't even see them sitting in the on the desk. So thank you for sharing that story. Do you miss selling real estate since you've been
I do, Sam, in
CREB?
some ways, many days. One of the things I love about the campus is just walking around and hearing people on the phone, putting deals back together, and I want to help them. Hearing them, go, well, congratulations, giving them the good news, offer accepted, whatever, or sending a text and then doing a quiet fist pump, and I fist pump back at them, and it's just some sort of weird signal that we know something cool just happened. But when I decided to no longer be a realtor again, it was a decision I had to make quickly because I knew I would talk myself out of it. Because the fear of doing something new in the world of being a CEO, you talk about the realities of the self-doubt that goes into the job. In some ways, it's a very social job, it's a very engaging job, and it's a very lonely job. And not to whine about it, but people document this. They talk about it, how it's hard to have that peer-to-peer conversation. It's hard to have that support system. You certainly can't have it within the office because people expect you to be the leader that already has 3 solutions mapped out, and somebody else is going to figure out which is the right one or whatever. But what I saw, and it was the benefit of this senior leadership experience, because the time on the MTC turned into being president of CREA. In those days, they called it president. And after that, I became the president of ICREA, which is the International Consortium of Real Estate Associations. Wow. So I was CREA's rep on an international body. So that was really interesting. I'm from Airdrie. Like, what the hell do I know about international anything? I can see the international airport across the prairie. That's about it. But I suddenly was starting to understand the importance of international real estate, of international referrals, of having designations that meant something, even though I was in landlocked Airdrie. But I also had exposure to great CEOs. And along the way, and some not so great, to be honest, not usually at the association I was involved in, which might be a blind spot, but certainly others. And it started me thinking about, could I do this, and would I want to do this? And one of the things I was alluding to a minute ago that people in my role struggle with sometimes, and some overcompensate for it, and some manage it, and some are guilty of it. But it's known as imposter syndrome, where you feel like I'm really not what people think I am. I'm really not that person. I'm really not that outgoing. I'm really not a top producing realtor. I'm really, and I had those same thoughts even when I was winning awards, sales awards, not just in Airdrie, but nationally in different things. And And it was exciting, but it always felt like, yeah, I'm 2 slow months away from this being over.
Right.
You know, and by the way, I went through that. You encouraged me to tell some stories during this. I went through a period of time where I didn't sell a house for 3 months.
Wow.
And I was far into my career. And I would say probably 18, 17, 19 years into the business. I didn't date stamp it that clearly, but I went through this period where I could not put a deal together. I had buyers, I had good listings, I was listing more listings. I couldn't put a deal together that saved my life. And you start to feel the pinch and you start to feel the pressure. So I can relate when people say, yeah, I'm guilty of a dumb thing, and whatever it is, I'll take the heat, you know, and people do that. And I really respect members that have gone through a challenging time on the member practice side, and our team does amazing work. But they're very consistent, and they will take you to task, and so they should. And I'll argue that with anybody all day.
Yeah.
But the challenge was that I started to question if this was how it ended. And when you start to think about how things end, you start to really appreciate what you have.
Right.
And I bumped into Frank Shreenan at the office, a longtime member. He passed away a couple of years ago. Wonderful man. We ended up being partners. And that came a couple of years later when I decided being the Lone Ranger realtor really wasn't, the way to a good quality of life and doing more business. So anyway, Frank and I kind of met up at the photocopier, just coming from different directions in the office we were at together. And he said, "How's it going?" And I said, "No, we're the and I said, "How about you?" And he says, "I haven't sold a house in 6 weeks." And I said, "I'm pushing 3 months." He said, "Really? You were the top producer last year at this." I said, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we had a good talk about it. He encouraged me. I encouraged him. We both went out and sold a house that day. So,
Wow.
those kind of things, those moments are pretty special. So, and I honestly, when I thought I needed to have a partner, the funny thing is I was on a flight. I was away at a CREB board meeting. I'm sitting on a plane with John Fraser, another longtime former CREB president and just a great man. Said, "What's going on with your business?" Because he ran a brokerage, so he knew how to talk agent.
Right.
What's going on really? And I said, I think I need to form a partnership. I need a partner. I need help. And he said, "Oh, that's a big decision. Why do you think that?" So I talked it out, and he said, "So who would you be a partner with?" I said, "Oh, I haven't even thought of that." And I said, "It'd have to be somebody like Frank Shreenan."
Right.
He said, "Why?" He said him right away. I said, "Because he's honest. Like, you ask him how it's going and he'll tell you." And he brought that out in me. So we looked at each other and was like, that's done. So honest to gosh, I went home and talked to Rona and then reached out to Frank. And he was shocked. We went for coffee and I said, "I got an idea. Have you ever worked in a partnership?" And he goes, "Well, no, Donna and I, we do our thing together." And Donna, his wife, a wonderful person, and she did the MLS.
Right.
It was too funny to work with them eventually. Because, by the way, what happened was I said to Frank, "I'd like to form this partnership. Here's my idea." And he said, "But that doesn't make sense. We're not 50-50. You do way more business than me." And I said, "Well, I do, but you've got way more time than I do."
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off. And anyway, so he kind of liked the idea. And he said, "What do we do next?" I said, "Well, I think we need to take it to the presidents of the company. It's time for a meeting with Rona and Donna." And he thought that was great because we both knew that was the next step. So the four of us got together and we formed a partnership. But through all that, and that enabled me to spend the time working my way through the leadership at CREA. It really opened the door, frankly. But my business changed and evolved. And, one of the things I really enjoy watching in our volunteer leaders is going through that growth. It's a special opportunity. And I think people that serve as volunteer leaders in any realm, whether any part of our society, I think there's a cycle of growth that's there for them. And if they embrace it, good for them and good for the organization for enabling that. But it's funny how, again, my business got better. Honestly, my busiest year as a realtor came the year I was president of CREB.
Wow.
And it probably shows up in the data. In 2006, I was president of CREA. weirdly, my biggest year before that had been in 1998 when I was president of CREB.
Oh, interesting.
So you think, oh, it's all people, because you're the president. No, what I dealt with a lot was people saying, oh, I didn't know you were still selling real estate. Oh, I was told you weren't selling real estate.
Oh, I see.
So, and of course, I was on the road. The year I was CREB president, I was on the road 171 nights. And that's hard to manage with a small town operation where it's all face-to-face marketing.
Right.
But anyway, I was able to sort of pull all that together, and it ended up being an interesting career. And when it was time to think about, well, what do I really want to do when I grow up? I really felt that it was the right time for me to go into association management, hopefully as the CREB president and CEO. But I was ready to go after whatever was out there.
Yeah.
And it might have been some other not-for-profit, likely in Calgary. It could have been outside the real estate sector. But fortunately, it worked out with CREB.
Well, fortunately for us, we're so happy to have you. I'm really glad that you mentioned Frank Shreenan. I was blessed enough to know Frank for some years in my career. And what a great role model you picked, because Frank was one of the kindest and gentlest people that I knew, very soft-spoken, very patient. So I'm really glad that you could learn from him and be prosperous and be the kind human being that you are today.
Everybody needs a Frank Shreenan in their life.
Everybody does need a Frank Shreenan in their lives, yeah. So CREB has been good to you, and you love it here. And I just want to go on record and saying you're never going to retire, right?
Oh no, I'm leaving. I'm definitely leaving. Yeah, and I don't want you to leave either. And we, folks, we do have a pact that we're leaving together, and
we do.
And it'll be loud and quick. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
Honestly, I'm starting to think about what's next.
Yeah.
My entrepreneurial mechanisms are alive and well, and they always have been. That's the thing. I've always even described myself in this role as a serial entrepreneur who's been fortunate to work with real estate boards of directors that get it, and there's never a blank check. There's always a hard conversation about risk and the benefits and the costs versus the benefits. But I've always enjoyed being able to be creative in this role, which I know is something nobody should take for granted. But one of the greatest things has been the campus. And I could tell you were sort of joking a bit about everything about the job being wonderful and lovely. And, there's a lot of stress. It's hard. And I know this is something that you deal with sometimes. When we're so invested in the success of our members, and when things aren't going well for you and we're seeing it, or we're not able to fix things or help you or whatever, or we go to too many funerals and those kinds of things, or we visit people in hospital, and you and I both do it, and we bumped into each other sometimes just quietly going to see somebody. But this business is wonderful. The people in it, the ability that they have to turn, whatever they're great at into a long career is astonishing.
It really is.
It's a gift. However, we have to evolve. We have to keep changing. We have to keep trying new things. But there's certain things about the culture around this organization that 40 plus years have sort of given me some insights on. And I'll just share one. And it is how important place is to CREB members. Place matters. And when we moved into this building, I remember in 2000, basically, I think it was, the excitement around it. But I also remember hearing stories about the excitement around the old building downtown.
Yes.
And how that building on Fifth Avenue was such an important part of our legacy. And one of the things we learn from previous leaders sometimes is the importance of things that you don't really understand. And I remember we used to have a past president's dinner, and now we call it the Circle of Distinction. So it's not just past presidents, it's our major award winners, our honorary life, Realtors of the Year, Volunteer of the Year, Rookie Volunteer of the Year. So we think it's really important to get all these folks together. And typically we have a fun golf outing, and we invite everybody to a dinner after, and it's fun, it's easygoing. And then we do a bit of a dinner in the fall.
Yes.
And it's a great event. No speeches, no real program. Just it's all about catching up and being together. And it's really important for new directors or directors to get to know some of the previous leaders and so on. So anyway, years ago, when it was just the past president's dinner, one of the past presidents, I won't say his name, but he was mayor. And we've only ever had one past president who was mayor of Calgary, so do your research. Anyway, he said, we're having open microphone tonight, because there was a time when they had open mic. So he's standing at the microphone asking the questions, so apparently we are. So he said, because I've got a question. I want to ask this board of directors, which I was president of, why do you think it's a good idea to sell our building and move to this new location outside of downtown? And he was mad, and he was angry, and then he kind of went on and on about, the land assembly and the trouble they went to put all that together. So I thanked him and honored his time and was very respectful and said, one of the challenges with that building is it's too small and we don't have enough parking. So for us to make it bigger and put in parking, we had to put in plus 15s. In those days, a plus 15 was a big ticket. And not only did we need one across Fifth Avenue, but we needed one across 7th Street and one across the alley. So 3 bridges had to get built on top of the cost of the building. So it was prohibitive.
Yeah.
And the building remains in virtually the same state CREB left it in to this day.
Yeah, I know. I just drove by it yesterday.
The company we sold it to is still there.
Yeah.
But what that taught me, and I didn't really figure it out till later, but what that taught me was the importance of place and respecting the efforts that realtors put into place and the significance and the meaning behind, whether it's your home or my home or our place of business. And if you think about it, a lot of our brokerages are pretty cool spaces.
Right.
Some of them are amazing and some aren't.
Yeah.
And that's part of their thing too. And some are just blessed with tons of parking,
Exactly.
whatever. But it's interesting how when you sit back and look at this, how when we moved into this space, there was concern, first of all, about why this lot, why this location, and lots of concern and lots of emotion, lots of passion.
Yes.
These are realtors talking about a real estate thing that's important to them. They want to make sure it's done right. So when we announced the campus renovation, were we expecting, a standing ovation and people, phoning and thanking us, texting us and thanking us? No, we knew there'd be concern. No matter how you got there, there was going to be some upset people. But what's happened is we've been able to have this conversation and explain the vision, and now the vision is unfolding and it's growing and evolving. It's not done. We'll keep making it better, and there's so many smart people thinking hard about how to make it better.
Yeah.
But one of the things about it was when we were working on the merger with Area that didn't go through, and Area's decision was they didn't want the building, right then and there I thought, this isn't going to get approved.
Right.
And I did everything I could to try to find ways to make that happen. And that was their call.
Yep.
And so what we focused on then was some sort of satellite version of place.
Yeah.
And again, trying to appease that need that I knew would be there. Because part of what was good about that whole proposal was a large part of CREB was going to remain as it is today and as it was for all these years. But nonetheless, water under the bridge didn't happen, but the lessons about place started to formulate.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, and I think that's one thing that we've really done an important job with. Maybe I was supposed to say a good job, but that's for members to decide. But I think we've worked really hard at making sure not only is the space impressive looking and nice and not over the top, but useful and functional.
Yeah.
And the basis for a more professional CREB membership. And that's bottom line.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this and coming up with the idea for a campus. On a daily basis, I see people using the space. They're either in here every day for a whole office and, coming in at 9 and leaving at 5 and being very disciplined. Or we might have members that are meeting somebody downtown and they just need a quick photocopy, or they just need to kill an hour and they don't want to drive back to their prospective home. So they'll just come here and grab a coffee, gives us a chance to touch base with them. As you know, I'm the volunteer engagement advisor, so it gives me a chance to, I want to use the word convince, but usually doesn't take much convincing to get them involved. So yeah, I think that placement is a big deal. I was fortunate enough to be here when we started talking about moving to this new site. And even me, as being a CREB staffer, I loved being downtown because of all the energy in the summer and around Stampede and Christmas. And I thought, oh, wow, like this is going to be boring. This is not going to work out. But trust me, I am so grateful when I see the traffic downtown. I'm like, great idea, board of directors. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for sharing your stories. I would like to put you on the spot and ask you if there is, without getting into any specifics, if there is a funny or a transaction that sticks out in your mind where you were like, I will never forget those clients, or I will never let myself get into that situation ever again. So, like I said, without giving us any specifics, do you have something that you can share with us?
You know, it's an interesting business because you really are on your own, except you're not.
Right.
You're in the public eye, you're with people. You see people at their best, you see people at their worst, you see things you shouldn't see, you witness different things. But I would say probably the most interesting thing, being a realtor over 26 years in a smaller marketplace where you know people and you get to watch them grow. And over that period of time, I did deal with different generations of families, and that was amazing. I can remember it happened quite often to where even during Stampede, I'm at the Rotary Dream Home. I'm Rotarian. I think it's important to be involved in your community, and I love being a Rotarian. And so I, for the first time, took a shift in the Dream Home. Usually I sell tickets. I love being out there talking to people on Midway, the noise, the hustle and bustle and all that. But I thought I'd take a shift. And honestly, it was like a return to my roots because I was joking before I left that morning that I was going to try to double end it, because that's really kind of an inside joke, because I didn't double end one in my whole career, and I hated doing open houses.
Oh my goodness.
I was terrible at them. But so anyway, a family walks through, old past clients. It was great.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation, and they, reintroduced me to their daughter, who's now a businesswoman, and she was telling me about her new business. And I said, but do you remember when I was coming over to list your parents' home, and you were mad that I was listing their house, and you started to cry, and you didn't want to leave your friends, and you were mad at me? And she said, you remember that? And I said, it happened many times, actually. But anyway, I said, it did. And she said, but what you said to me that night was, it'll be okay. Your new home is going to be amazing. And it was. And Mom and Dad are still there.
Yeah.
And it really gave me a different perspective. And she said, but I'm surprised you cared about what a 13-year-old girl's temper tantrum felt like. And I said, well, it kind of hit me.
Yeah.
I had two daughters, and
right.
It's a challenging thing to have that guy sitting here and we're moving, and
right.
I'm moving away from my besties,
right.
So.
And you looked like you were the one to blame because you came and put the sign up. You're the one who's showing the home. So if it wasn't for you, she could stay with her friends.
Well, you know what, Sam? The thing was, really my goal was to make sure Mom and Dad were okay with it, right. Because damn it, we had a listing agreement to get signed. So I'll take the heat. You sign here.
Yeah, exactly right. That's fantastic. I'm sure you've got lots of other stories to share. If you guys ever come into CREB, you have to go into Alan's office. When he came to CREB, his team made him a poster that outlines the Realtor logo. And it's little pixelated shots of all of the houses that Alan sold throughout his career. It's a super neat piece of art that I think that everybody should see. In closing, is there any advice you would share with any of the new members that are coming in? Anything you would like to throw at them?
I would say enjoy the ride. This business is one that really does repay you for what you put into it, and put your best self into it.
Yeah.
And always carry yourself as if everybody is watching. And that's a lesson I learned in the newspaper business. I went to town council meetings in those days in Airdrie, another quick story, and there was a big scandal. And the fire chief had been fired, and there was all kinds of acrimony and all kinds of problems, and confidential documents were being read out in council meetings and everything. And I went just to get to know the community.
Right.
So this was a bit of an eye-opener. But it also taught me the importance of carrying yourself as if everything is being recorded. And it was just something that stayed with me.
Yeah.
And, as a kid, I read about Watergate and,
Right.
whatever. All that era kind of led us to think, people need to be accountable.
Yeah.
So carry yourself as if you are being accountable in the moment.
Yeah.
And do those things, or check yourself, and then just work at getting that little bit better.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest gift you can give to the world.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. You said, walk through the world as if you're being watched. I don't even think that there's an as if anymore. I think that we are being recorded all the time. Yeah. And how much better the world would be if everybody actually thought that way. Yeah. In my experience, I have learned also that in this industry, relationships are very important. And you touched on, you might be working with people, but actually it's a very solitary industry. So the more you can work with people, actually last week I was just talking to somebody, I want to just touch on the fact that you partnered up with Frank, and you did so well. And also in the years where you were CREB president and CREB president, where those were also memorable years for you as well. I think that it was because you were around people and you surrounded yourself with those types of people, and that they lifted you up. So to Alan's point, I think, if you can surround yourself with great people that you respect and that are doing the things that you would like to do yourself, I think you'll be happy and successful. But that's, just me.
Well said as always, Sam.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Alan. We really appreciate
Pleasure.
it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of CREB Cast. And if you would like to join us and be a guest and come and talk about yourself, we would love to have you. Please reach out to us and have a great day, and we'll see you next time.